The glass of water trembled in my hand. "It's not a request, Dad." My son, Brandon, stood before me, his jaw set. "You're moving to the basement so Amelia can have the master suite. The light is better for her content creation." I felt the words like a physical blow. This was my home. I sold my own house to help them buy this one. "No, Brandon," I said, my voice steady but thin. "I'm not moving." His face hardened, a mask of cold entitlement I didn't recognize. He stepped closer, invading my space. "Then you can get out of my house. Right now." The silence that followed was deafening. His house. The words hung in the air, a brutal eviction notice from my only child in the property I had gifted him. From the doorway, my daughter-in-law, Amelia, spoke, her voice a syrupy poison. "Walter, be reasonable. The lighting in there is perfect for my morning streams. The basement apartment is perfectly comfortable." I looked from her calculated pout to my son's unyielding glare. This was a coordinated attack. The two little girls, my granddaughters, were thankfully upstairs, unaware their grandfather was being exiled. "You're serious?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. Brandon crossed his arms. "Dead serious. This is our house, and we need the space to grow. You're being selfish." The accusation stung. After all I'd sacrificed, I was the selfish one. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. A strange, cold calm washed over me. The last thread of hope that this was a temporary lapse in my son's judgment snapped. I looked at the man he had become, this stranger dictated by his wife's vanity, and felt something final click into place inside my chest. I set the water glass down on the side table, the sound unnaturally loud in the tense silence. "You're right," I said, my voice eerily quiet. "It is your house. I'll be out by the end of the month." A flicker of surprise, then smug victory, passed over Brandon's face. He thought he'd won. He had no idea he'd just lost everything. "My name is Walter. I'm 68 years old, a retired machinist. 10 years ago, I lost my wife, Eleanor, to cancer. She was the love of my life, the social butterfly to my quiet homebody. After she was gone, my world shrank to one person, Brandon. He was my son, my pride, the last piece of her. When he and Amelia got engaged, I was thrilled. I wanted to give them the head start Eleanor, and I never had. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I sold my paid-off bungalow, handed them the entire profit for a down payment, and moved into their new houses in La Suite. A permanent arrangement, they said.
The suite was a generous term for a bedroom, a small sitting area, and a half bath. The full bathroom was down the hall, but it was home. I paid them a generous monthly rent that covered a third of the mortgage, plus all the utilities and groceries. I was the built-in babysitter for my granddaughters, Katie and Lily. I fixed every leak, mowed the lawn, and handled all the handyman chores. I thought I was pulling my weight, being part of the family. I didn't realize I was just a tenant, a utility, an asset to be managed, and now relocated for a better return on investment. Amelia's influencer career began subtly. A post about mom life here, a recipe there. Then it consumed her. Our home became a backdrop for her curated reality. My comfortable leather recliner was replaced with a white, uncomfortable aesthetic couch. Family meals were interrupted for photos. My presence in her videos was discouraged. I didn't fit the brand. Brandon, once a sensible engineer, became her manager, her hype man. He saw dollar signs in her follow account. My contributions, the stable income, the childcare, the practical upkeep of our lives became invisible, overshadowed by the glittering potential of viral fame. The first real crack appeared 6 months ago. I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. "He's always there, Brandon," Amelia hissed. "I can't get a clean shot of the kitchen without his newspaper in the frame. And his old person smell is in everything." I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart crumbling. My son's response was a placating murmur. "Just be patient, honey. We'll figure something out." He didn't defend me. He didn't tell her she was being cruel. He agreed with her. I was a problem to be solved. I spent that night in my room, the walls feeling thinner than ever. After the ultimatum, I didn't pack. I planned. I had one card left to play, a secret I'd kept even from Brandon. My older brother, Frank, had passed away 2 years ago and left me his modest, fully paid lakeside cabin. It was 3 hours north, a quiet, rustic place. I'd kept it, telling Brandon it was a money pit I was trying to sell. But really, it was my escape fund, my last link to a world outside this gilded cage. The next morning, while Brandon and Amelia were at a brunch, I made a call, not to a rental agency, but to a realtor. "It's time," I said. "List the cabin. All cash. Quick close."
Martha, the realtor, was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s. "Market's hot. Walter, we can list it above asking. Get a bidding war." I gave her the keys. "I don't need a war, Martha. I need a fast, clean sale. The contents go too. Everything." I felt a pang selling Frank's place, but sentimentality was a luxury I could no longer afford. The cabin was my freedom ticket. Meanwhile, at home, Brandon and Amelia were blissfully ignorant, already measuring my windows for new blinds. They thought my quiet compliance was surrender. They didn't know it was the calm before the storm. The cabin sold in 10 days for cash, netting me more than I'd expected. The money hit my account, a number that felt like armor. My next stop was the bank. I met with a financial advisor, a young man named Alex. I explained my situation without the emotion. "I need to restructure my life. I want to lock this away in investments that provide a steady, monthly income. Safe. Conservative." I opened a new account at a different bank, one Brandon knew nothing about. I was building a fortress around myself, brick by financial brick. They had evicted me from their house. I was evicting them from my finances. The following Monday, I acted. I went to the local power company and transferred the utility account out of my name and into Brandon's. I did the same for the water, gas, and internet. The representatives were polite, efficient. It took less than an hour. There was no drama, no confrontation, just a series of bureaucratic formalities that severed the invisible strings that tied me to their comfort. I was the ghost in the machine, and I was quietly logging out. Brandon would discover it all on the first of the month, when the bills started arriving in his name alone. I found a one-bedroom apartment in a quiet, well-maintained seniors complex called Maple Grove. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, safe, and most importantly, mine. The lease was for 1 year. I paid the first and last month's rent and the security deposit in cash from the cabin sale. I scheduled the move for the last Saturday of the month. I hired movers myself, choosing a reputable, if expensive, company. I would not rely on Brandon for anything. This was my fresh start, orchestrated with the same methodical precision I'd used my entire life. A week before my move, the first thread pulled loose. Brandon came to my room, his phone in hand. "Dad, the internet is down. Can you call the company? You're the account holder." I looked up from my book. "I'm not anymore. Son, I transferred all the utilities into your name last week. You're the homeowner, after all." The confusion on his face was almost comical. "You? What? Why would you do that?" I gave him a mild smile. "You said I should leave. I'm just getting my affairs in order." He stared at me, a dawning understanding that he was no longer in control of this situation. 2 months in, Brandon showed up at my apartment. He looked tired. "Dad, we need to talk. We might lose the house." He explained that without my contribution, and with the new expenses, they were falling behind on the mortgage. Amelia's brand deals had dried up. The market was saturated. We were wondering, that cabin from Uncle Frank. "You never sold it, right? We could take a loan against it, just to get us back on our feet." I looked at my son. His desperation laid bare. He hadn't come to apologize. He'd come for my last asset. "I did sell the cabin, Brandon," I said, my voice even. "I sold it the week after you told me to get out." His face went slack with shock. "You? What? Why?" "To secure my future," I replied. "The money is locked away, providing me with an income. It's untouchable." The realization that his safety net was gone, that I had acted so decisively and permanently, dawned on him. "You planned this," he whispered, a mix of horror and respect in his eyes. "No," I corrected. "You made a choice. I simply made my own, better ones afterward." The foreclosure notice came 3 months later. The picture-perfect home, the backdrop for Amelia's influencer dreams, was gone. They moved into a small, cramped rental across town. Brandon had to take a second job. Amelia's career effectively ended, and she had to get a retail job. The constant stress tore at their marriage. I heard the arguments had become constant. The life they had built on the foundation of my sacrifice could not stand on its own. Their golden cage had turned to lead. Today, I sit on the balcony of my apartment, watching the birds in the garden. I see my granddaughters every other weekend. Our time together now precious and focused, not taken for granted. They seem happier in the simpler environment. Brandon and I are civil, but distant. The lesson was harsh, but he learned it. He no longer sees me as a resource. My victory wasn't in their downfall, but in my liberation. I didn't have to get angry. I just had to get organized. And in the quiet of this morning, with the sun on my face, I have everything I need.
My first morning in the apartment was serene. I woke up without the sound of Amelia filming a Blender video or the girls screaming. I made coffee in my own machine and sat in my own chair, looking out at a courtyard garden. The silence was not empty, it was peaceful, it was mine. I felt a profound sense of relief. There was no guilt, only the quiet certainty that I had saved myself from a slow, resentful decline in a home where I was no longer wanted. For the first time in a long time, I felt like Walter again. Not just Dad or Grandpa. A week after my move, my phone buzzed. It was Brandon. I let it go to voicemail. His message was strained. Dad, the power bill was astronomical. And the water bill, what's going on? And Katie has a recital on Thursday. You're coming, right? She'll be expecting you. The tone was a mixture of panic and assumption. He wasn't asking how I was. He was listing problems I used to solve and expecting my continued participation. I deleted the message. The recital was the first test. My absence would send a clearer message than any argument ever could. Amelia called next. Her voice was saccharine. Walter, sweetie, we miss you. The girls are asking for you. Listen, Brandon's swamped at work, and I have a brand deal shoot all day Thursday. Is there any way you could pick the girls up from school? The audacity was breathtaking. They had kicked me out, and a month later, they were calling for a favor as if nothing had happened. I'm afraid I have a prior commitment, I said calmly. You'll need to make other arrangements. The silence on the other end was priceless. Before she hung up without another word, I learned from a former neighbor that Brandon had taken a day off work to handle the kids. Amelia's content output had slowed considerably. The cost of after-school care and a housekeeper was eating into their disposable income. The perfect life they presented online was straining at the seams under the weight of its actual responsibilities. They were discovering that my $1,500 a month in rent and utilities, plus free labor, had been the foundation of their lifestyle. Without that foundation, the facade was beginning to crack. Later that evening, Amelia confronted me. Walter, Brandon says you canceled the internet. I have a live collaboration scheduled tomorrow. Her voice was shrill. I didn't cancel it, I corrected calmly. I transferred the responsibility to you. You'll need to call and set up a new account in your name. I'm sure your brand can cover the expense. She gaped at me, speechless, for one of the first times since I'd known her. Brandon stood behind her, his expression a mixture of anger and confusion. They were realizing that my departure came with tangible costs they had never considered. Dinner that night was tense. My granddaughters, sensing the mood, were quiet. So, you found a place? Brandon asked, his tone accusatory. I have, I said, serving myself some green beans. A lovely apartment at Maple Grove. Maple Grove? Amelia scoffed. That's a senior home. I met her gaze. It's a community for independent seniors, which is what I am. Brandon leaned forward. How can you afford that? Your pension isn't that much. I just smiled. I've managed my finances, son. Something I'd recommend you both start doing more carefully. The rest of the meal passed in a thick, hostile silence. The movers arrived at a M-sharp. I had packed everything that was truly mine. My clothes, my tools, my books, the photo albums, and the few pieces of furniture I'd brought from my old house, including Eleanor's favorite reading chair. Brandon stood on the porch, watching in stunned silence as his stable, predictable father systematically disappeared from his life. Amelia had taken the girls out, unable to watch the dismantling of her free childcare and utility bill payer. With each box that left, I felt a weight lift. I was not being pushed out. I was breaking free. By afternoon, my room was empty, a hollow shell. I did one last walkthrough, ensuring I'd left nothing behind. In the kitchen, I placed my house key on the counter. Next to it, I stacked the mail I'd collected, the new utility bills, all addressed to Brandon and Amelia. My final message was clear. The burden is now yours. I walked out the front door without looking back. I didn't say goodbye to Brandon, who was still staring numbly from the living room window. The click of the door shutting behind me was the most satisfying sound I'd heard in years.